Hi, I am Torit Mato. Welcome to Art in Purulia. This is the second part of Basics of Acrylic Painting. In the first part, we had seen the materials that you will require for acrylic painting. We had discussed the painting surface, paints, brushes, and other accessories. You will find the link in the description below. In this video, I'll share some important tips about characteristics of acrylics and the techniques you can use with acrylics. We'll also see demonstration of a landscape painting using acrylics to understand the basic steps. It's important to understand some general characteristics of acrylic paint before starting. This will hopefully make painting easier, make the techniques you try more successful, expand the possibilities for each technique, and possibly save you some time and money also. Acrylics can be used in combination with other mediums. If you like using other mediums such as oil, gouache, pastel or egg tempera, then try using them on top of the acrylic techniques. Avoid the reverse, that is using acrylic over other mediums. Oil paint, for example, can be used over acrylic but not the other way around. Also avoid combining different wet mediums in the same wet blend. For example, watercolor can be used to wonderful effect on top of acrylic that is already dry, but blending the two when wet is less effective. Acrylic products are compatible with each other. You can combine any acrylic products together to create new mixtures and hybrids. For instance, you can mix paints into gels and again into mediums without decreasing their stability. Keep in mind that the characteristics of one particular paint or product will change when you mix it with another. This can work to your advantage. For example, mixing a gloss medium with a matte medium will produce an excellent semi-gloss. You can also use acrylic products and paints in any order on your surface. Gels can go on top of mediums and mediums on gels. Diluted paint works on undiluted paint and vice versa. Glossy can go on top of matte, then on satin and on glossy again. A few acrylic products, however, are better used alone. Use acrylic gesso as a primer and not as a paint. In thick applications, acrylic gesso may crack. Use a varnish as a final protective coat, even though it can be used in the middle layers of a painting. It's meant to be removable and used as a final coat. Additives need to be used in correct proportions, like retarder and flow improver. Any acrylic paint or product can function very well as a glue. You can add collage elements and mixed media to acrylic while wet and it will adhere. As you paint, keep the bristles of the brushes in water until you can clean them well with soap and water. Soap removes paint from the brush more effectively than water. If the brush in use is left out of water too long, the paint will dry on your brush and be difficult to remove later. To make cleaning easier, slightly dampen the brush bristles with water before dipping them into the acrylic paint. Damp bristles keep the paint from gripping the bristles too tightly, making the paint easier to remove. You can use a dip tumbler for cleaning the extra paint, but avoid keeping the brushes vertical on the bristles for too long, since it may damage the shape. Instead, try and keep in a shallow container, almost horizontal. In general, it is better to mix paint with a knife. Brushes are meant to hold paint, while knives more easily release the paint. Mix a batch of paint with a knife for a clean, homogeneous mixture. There are two choices for thinning acrylic paint: water or acrylic medium. Adding water will break down the acrylic binder in the paint, creating a thinner paint that appears like watercolor, with more of a matte finish. The more water you add, the more the paint will be affected by the absorbency of the painting surface. Using acrylic mediums, however, will maintain the acrylic's properties, offering a rich, glossy paint. Acrylic shrinks in volume while drying. As acrylic dries, the paint layer will shrink by about 1/3 in volume. This is more noticeable when using thick pastes and gels. Generally, apply a paint layer that is little thicker than what you want at completion. Acrylic appears darker in color when dry. The acrylic binder is naturally white when wet, but dries clear and glossy. With acrylic paints, the color will appear lighter when wet but will go to its natural color when dry. The more mediums and gels you add to a paint color, the greater the difference between this lighter version when wet and its natural color when dry. Acrylic is naturally glossy. Matte products such as matte mediums, matte gels and matte varnishes have matting agent, that is a fine white powder, added to them to create their characteristic appearance. This matting agent will slightly cloud and lighten colors underneath. The thicker the application of a matte product, the more this cloudy and lightening effect will be apparent. Be aware of the tacky phase. While the paint is still wet, it is very malleable. You can scrape it, wipe it off and rework it with ease. As you continue to work into this wet paint, however, it's already beginning to dry. Once it dries to the touch, it has a wonderfully resistant surface on which you can overlay new paints without disturbing what is underneath. It's between the wet stage and this dry to the touch stage when problems can occur. Between the wet and dry stages, the acrylic gets tacky. And continued working over this tacky area can create unwanted effects such as streaking or pulling as the paint sticks to your brush. Initially, acrylic paint glides smoothly and easily, but as it reaches the tacky phase, it will begin to pull and feel difficult and out of control. At this point, stop painting in that area and move on to a drier area of the painting. Do not freeze acrylic. Oil painters sometimes freeze the excess paint on their palettes to prolong the paint's life. Do not try this with acrylic. Acrylic contains a certain amount of antifreeze, but after a few freeze-thaw cycles, the paint will no longer be stable. Acrylic paintings, even when fully cured, should not be exposed to extreme temperatures. When you thin down the acrylic paint using water, you will get watercolor effect. And you can use any watercolor technique. Only thing is you cannot remove once dry, unlike watercolor. But advantage is that you can put another layer on top, completely hiding the earlier one, or glaze over it to make it a mix of both. When you add mediums, you can get oil painting effect, not exactly but almost. Not only you can do all the techniques which you can use in watercolor and oils, but much more. We had seen these techniques in watercolor. Washes, wet on wet, wet on dry, masking, texturing, scratching and so on. You can do all of them using acrylics. Only thing is, you should be using acrylic as watercolor on paper only. If you give watercolor effect on canvas, it looks awkward and the canvas shows through. We have also seen these techniques in oils, wet in wet, layering, glazing, blending, impasto, graffito, scumbling, texturing, grisaille, etc. You can do all these and with much ease, without the order of oils and solvents, and not much of cleaning hassles. Acrylics have really no rules. You need not abide by fat over lean and thick over thin, what you do in case of oils. Moreover, you can combine acrylics with any other medium. This we have discussed earlier. Pouring. You can add a pouring medium to acrylic paint to make a thin consistency like honey, which can be poured on surfaces, and after manipulation of the flow, you can get extremely exclusive effects. This effect is only possible with acrylics. You can embed various articles and materials on paint using gels, pastes or the paint itself and create extremely good collages and abstract creations. Another way you can create beautiful masterpieces is by using gold leaf as a layer. Now that we have seen the characteristics of acrylics and the versatility of use, let's see demonstration of a painting from beginning to end. The steps will be application of a layer or two of gesso over the canvas, then application of a muted color if you desire. This is not compulsory. You can straightway draw the outline over a white canvas and start painting also. At times you need not even draw the outline. Then block the canvas with a first coat by applying the general color and tone without much details. Once the layer is dry, build up with another layer with more details. Apply glazing where required and paint the fine details till you are happy. It's very difficult to find out when you should consider a painting to have been finished. Just use your judgment. At times, you may leave it without much finer details and call it finished. I have tried to cover the basics of using acrylics for painting in nutshell. You definitely need to wet your brushes with paints to discover. So go on. Thanks for watching the video. Watch out for more videos on tips, tutorials and many more. See you.